Good morning, everyone. What a great pleasure it is to welcome all of you here today to the Civil Rights Memorial Center. My name is Margaret Huang, and I have had the great privilege for the last 2 years of serving as the SPLC's, the Southern Poverty Law Center's president and CEO, based here in Montgomery, Alabama. Today is a very special day. Many of you will know the Civil Rights Memorial Center. It is a legacy to the civil rights movement and to the people who gave their lives for that struggle and for the rights that we all enjoy or are fighting for still today. But we're celebrating today because we've also had the chance to rethink the role of the Civil Rights Memorial Center in telling the story. Today, we're not just celebrating the work of our ancestors and our forebears who fought the struggle to bring civil rights to everyone in the United States. We're also supporting the work of activism today. Young people, old people like me, and folks across the spectrum who care about civil rights, who care about our planet, who care about our communities, are all working today to keep that struggle going. And the Civil Rights Memorial Center is dedicated to connecting all of these movements for justice so that we recognize that protecting one group of people is not enough, but we have to protect all groups of people living together in our communities. So we have a wonderful new video inside the Civil Rights Memorial Center. I hope you will all take the chance to go and see it. We have new exhibits, and we have, of course, the wonderful and inestimable director of the Civil Rights Memorial Center, Taffany English, who's going to come up and introduce our program today. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you all for being here with us today. This is indeed an exciting time for the Civil Rights Memorial Center to unveil Blank Slate here in Montgomery, Alabama. We know that museums contribute powerfully to creating a more enlightened and empathetic society. And as communities across the globe continue to confront racial injustices that we continue to see in our communities, the Civil Rights Memorial Center has reimagined and reinvented its place in community because museums should represent the communities in which they live. I want to first take this time to thank Margaret Wong and Leisha Brooks, the leadership team of the Southern Poverty Law Center, for even opening the doors for us to have the Blank Slate Monument here. And to the Blank Slate team, to Morris and Rania, I just can't thank you enough. And Brendan, who is not here, and Earl, who is not here. We had a storm last week, but they were out here in the rain, like making sure that this exhibit was going up. And it was such an awakening and just to watch them care for the monument and prepare it for its unveiling here in Montgomery, Alabama. And it caused me to reflect on my upbringing. I'm a native Alabamian. I grew up in North Alabama. And oftentimes people have always told me, leave Alabama, there's nothing here. But there was something in my ancestors that made me stay here and wanted to do the work here because I realized that I too am Alabama. And so when I look and I see, this pushback against the teaching of Black history specifically in this state, we have to take a stand. And so when Margaret talked about the new film, I really do hope you all will go in and see it because apathy is not an option. And all of history should be taught, regardless of how brutal, how hard, and how ugly it is. It should be taught so that we don't repeat the atrocities of yesterday. Because as I say all the time, the future is us. It is all of us. And this community is ours as well. So thank you all so much for being here. And I'll turn it over to Leisha Brooks, our Chief of Staff.
Thank you so much, Taffany, Margaret. Thank you to each and every one of you that showed up today. Thank you to the Blank Slate team. Thank you, Rania. Thank you for sharing this wonderful, wonderful gift with us. My name is Leisha Brooks. I serve as the Chief of Staff and Culture at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Taffany asked me to share just a little bit about the purpose. Why are we here today? Yes, we're certainly here to honor the Civil Rights Memorial and the new bold vision that Taffany English has brought to the Civil Rights Memorial, but we're also here to unveil this important monument, Blank Slate, a hope for a new America. And certainly I would say that the Southern Poverty Law Center in our 50th year continue to have a hope for a new America. We also know that hope is not enough. It's not going to get us there to a new America. We, in the tradition of the civil rights martyrs and our forebears and foremothers before, know that we have to do something to make change happen, to create the America that we hear about, that we read about, the high ideals that we talk about in terms of American exceptionalism. It's up to us to make that happen. The Southern Poverty Law Center, as a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working to improve, or I'm sorry, I'm losing the words. I know it's a newer thing. And engaging in intersectional movements and centering community. This is a new start for us. This is a gift from the Southern Poverty Law Center to the community of Montgomery, to the state of Alabama, and we're so grateful that you are here to share that with us today. I wanted to say a little bit about the history of the Southern Poverty Law Center's work with respect to removing Confederate monuments. You may recall the tragic events, the awful massacre in Charleston, South Carolina that occurred in 2015, where the murderer was known to fetishize images of the Confederacy. We saw pictures of him with Confederate flags and standing proudly, and it came to the Southern Poverty Law Center. We thought, gosh, we certainly are used to seeing images of the Confederacy scattered and littered across the state of Alabama. Now they're showing up. They're also showing up in South Carolina. But how many are there? What are we doing in this country with respect to continuing to honor the lost cause narrative, a false narrative that I might add? So we set out to catalog the number of symbols of the Confederacy that existed in public space. The initial campaign was called Erasing Hate. And we reached out to over 800 community partners to tell us what symbols of the Confederacy existed within their community. The response was so overwhelming that we were led to create the project now known as Whose Heritage? Because often in Alabama and across the South, you hear this, again, false narrative that it's about heritage, not hate. We maintain that symbols of the Confederacy, symbols that are meant to uplift people who stood on the side to continue to enslave African American human beings, is all about hate, and that we should not venerate symbols of the Confederacy or so-called heroes of the Confederacy in 2022. And we find that people across the country are joining us in that movement. So from 2016, in our first edition of Whose Heritage, where we cataloged about 1,500 symbols, to today, thanks to community partners, we identify over 2,000 symbols of the Confederacy that exist. Not just monuments and memorials, but street names, school names, parks, all of these things that work within our psyche to tell us and feed us this false history of the Confederacy, when we know that the Civil War was fought to maintain the system of chattel slavery in the United States, and we never want to forget that. And those people who fought on that side should not be honored. We should teach history, as Taffany said, in its full and complete form. So now we have, thanks to our partners in Rania, see, you never know what's going to happen when you set out to do something, when you set out to tell the truth. We set out to tell the truth, and I want to thank and honor Kimberly Allen, who's with us today, who, Kimberly, if not for your advocacy for years, and that of Seth, we would not be here today. So I just want to thank and honor Kimberly. Give her a big hand. I'm telling you, if anyone advocates for the removal of Confederate monuments across this country, it's Kimberly Allen. And thanks to Kimberly's work with our comms department, it came to the attention of Rania and the team at Blank Slate. They have been using Southern Poverty Law Center's research that tells the story about Confederate monuments in the United States. So that brings us to this day, and that brings us to the unveiling, and it's my great, great pleasure to introduce to you Morris.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Morris Sinclair. I live in Accra, Ghana, and I work with Kwame Akotabamfo, the artist, and I came aboard the team of the Blank Slate Monument in 2019 when it first started with a phone call from Rania and Elker, her co-founder of the Blank Slate Monument. Now imagine 500 years ago, you are with your family in the village, and your husband or your partner goes out to the field and all of that. He comes back, there's no one there. The place is ransacked, burning. Nobody's there to tell him, well, where did everybody go? They're gone, they're vanished. They don't come back that night, they don't come back the next day, next week, next year, next 20 years, next 50 years, next generation, next 2 generations. Nobody knows where these people disappeared to. They just vanished. There's no WhatsApp message to say, hey, we're just, we'll be right back. So when I met Kwame Akotabamfo at first, he had these sculptures of heads, which are symbols of funerary symbols for memorializing the dead in Ghana, the Akan tradition. They're called headstones. So some of the heads had the hair half done. You know, I'm like, well, why is some of the hair half done? Because that's what happened. Mother was doing the hair, half of it is done, they came and got them. He made 1,300 of these sculptures. And we went on a quest to show these sculptures to the world by placing them in the dungeons at Cape Coast Castle in Ghana. And that's when this whole journey began, after meeting Kwame. Then, that was in 2017. That was an amazing event at Cape Coast Castle. Then Rania and Elker saw the civil rights sculptures, the sculptures at the EJI that Kwame also made, and decided to, you know, hey, who's this artist? I was working with Kwame, a phone call came in, and then that's when the journey began in 2019. Kwame conceptualized this whole thing based on the fact that there are so many Confederate monuments, and let's do something that speaks to the fact that this journey started 500 years ago and it's still going on. And almost as if nothing has changed. I'll be showing you a lot more about what this whole thing means once we do the unveiling. But the bottom line is that thanks to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the research they have done, Rania and Elker founding this whole movement, the Blank Slate Movement, I would like everyone right now to go onto Instagram and follow Blank Slate Monument. And also on Twitter, Blank Slate NFT, which we're going to talk about later on, because we're going to do some NFTs on that. We have to get into technology. Anyhow, the bottom line is that once we unveil this, I'll be able to tell more about the story of what everything means and all the various figures that you see on the sculpture. But the journey still continues. Thank you so much to the Southern Poverty Law Center. There is no such thing as coincidence. It's all serendipity. It's all meant to happen, and that's why we're here today. So for now, I'll pause until we do the unveiling, and then I'll tell you more about the story. Thank you so much.